So how did I go from a former United States Marine to go to Everest? Well, we'll go back to the summer of 2001. I got a dip in my mouth, so it's my channel, so if it offends you or if it's bothersome, I'll get over it. I got a dip in my mouth. So, former United States Marine and how I got to Everest. Actually, my interest in Everest started while I was in the United States Marine Corps. So I joined the Marine Corps in the summer of 2001. Did the boot camp thing, did recruit training in Paris Island, South Carolina. After recruit training, a lot of times people think I say this for some kind of dramatic effect or to like dun 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 moment. But for the non-infantry types in the Marine Corps, I'm only speaking about the Marine Corps, I'm not qualified to speak about the Army or Navy, even though I'm familiar with the pipeline. I'll leave that for those people who've been through that particular pipeline. But in the Marine Corps, if you're a non-infantry type, which is actually most of the Marine Corps, you end up going to something called Marine combat training. So going to boot camp in Paris Island, South Carolina, went back home for a 2-week leave deal, and then took a bus down to North Carolina to Camp Geiger, which is basically just a part of Camp Lejeune. And I checked in for Marine combat training on September 11, 2001. Again, I'm sure I can dig up my records, and if people are really dying to fact check me, we can do that. But yeah, September 11, 2001, I remember getting to the gates of the base, and the MPs were setting up crew-served weapons, and then the taxi driver was telling us about how, oh yeah, the Pentagon is completely gone. At this point, the towers hadn't fallen, but the Pentagon had already been hit, and apparently from those initial reports, nobody really knowing anything. Oh yeah, the Pentagon is completely gone. Los Angeles is under attack. The air base in Alaska is under attack. Blah, blah, blah. So a lot of things, it was bad, of course, and tragic, but at that point, things were getting really out of hand. Oh yeah, we're already at war with Egypt. We're already at war with Iraq. We're already at war with Iran. And it's like, oh my God. It's like, I joined at a bad time. Or at the right time. For me, it was about doing my bit for king and country. I had studied classics in college. And one of my favorite books, which I still read constantly, I'll still read through it to this day, is the Homeric works. And that aspect of duty, wherever my country's call is, that's where I'll be. And so did the Marine combat training, then went to my MOS school in Meridian, Mississippi, and won't go into too much detail. If I were, it would just be, I'd bore the hell out of you. One thing I did learn from the Marine Corps, a lot of people are shocked by this, is that I learned to type in the United States Marine Corps. So I was an MOS, a military occupational specialty of aviation operations. So an aviation operations specialist. And you go to school, you just know, a lot of times people aren't familiar with how these pipelines in the military work. And so you go to an A school, whether you're an infantryman or a radar technician or an aviation operations specialist or a cook, baker, candlestick maker, you go to an A school. That's just it. So afterwards, they have a listing of where you were at in the class. I think I was like number 6 out of a class of 20. And my numbers could be wrong. This is like over 20 years ago, but I think I was 6th out of a class of 20. So not great, but not terrible either. And they got all the duty stations written out on the board. And there aren't that many. there's actually one, I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There's one for an air base outside of Philadelphia called Willow Grove Air Force Base. Not sure if it's still there. I'd heard something that maybe it closed down. But for those who watch the video, you can let me know or I'll check afterwards. So there's one for Pennsylvania, one for Hawaii, and then the rest were North Carolina and California. And I remember the guy right before me. He was like, oh yeah, I'm going to fucking Hawaii. I'm like, dude, I will give you my whole next paycheck if you let me get Hawaii. He's like, fuck no. And I was like, all right. I was like, come on, man, I'll give you 2 paychecks. He's like, I'll think about it. So we're all waiting in the hallway, and he goes into the classroom. He's like, Hawaii. And I'm like, motherfucker. I'm like, all right, Hawaii's gone. Hawaii's off the table. That's fine. At least there's still California. I knew I didn't want to go to North Carolina because I had already been to North Carolina, and I wasn't interested in going back. But up to that point, I had never been to California before. So I was like, man, California. And there was, I think, one for Camp Pendleton, and then the rest were Miramar. And I asked, I asked the instructors, well, which one is better? And they were kind of giving me the feedback. And there was one, VMFA 314. VMFA 314 was made famous in the movie Independence Day. It's Will Smith's squadron, so that's an actual squadron. That was my squadron when I went into active duty, into the fleet that it's called. So I had orders to VMFA 314, which is a boat squadron. So get out there. They're actually already gone, so they put me somewhere else, just basically kind of doing busy work, waiting for my squadron to get back, doing shit details. Because when you're new into the Marine Corps or any branch of service, really, you're doing all the shit details. Like, hey, Algio, clean this fucking toilet. And it's like, fuck, dude. Like, how many fucking toilets does this place have? I'm the only one who needs to be cleaning them. So finally my squadron gets back, and they're back for a very short amount of time before we do a workup, and we're out. Do 9 months in Asia. So we're talking 2003. So up to this point, I had been in the Marine Corps for 18 months, already on my first deployment, on a ship, and take me back to something one of my drill instructors had said. So there are different types of drill instructors. And what I mean by that, and those who have served, who are watching this video, hey, you can kind of fact check me and tell me if I'm relaying certain information correctly, especially if you were on the drill field. So you have the senior drill instructor, who is the main drill instructor. And he's in charge of the other drill instructors. He's like daddy. He's considered daddy. He's the nicer of the drill instructors. Then you have the J hat. The J hat is the more junior hat. He's the one who's doing all the periods of instruction, Marine Corps history, teaching how to make a rack. He's the instructor. And then you have the heavy. The heavy is the one who brutalizes you, and he's the heavy. The heavy drill instructor, staff sergeant Poole. He was my favorite. He was the best. And he said some shit that just, to this day makes me laugh. He was, I messed up something on the drill field, and he's like, hey, Algio? Yes, sir. You're about to come up missing, boy. And I was just like, man, it's like, be ashamed if you end up in the swamp, boy. Yes, sir. But he was the best. And he had said something before we graduated, is one day, he was like, he knew this was going to happen. Or maybe that's something they said, I don't know. That one day you're going to find yourself on a ship or on a plane and wondering where you're going. And wondering if you were trained well enough to be able to be there. And that he wanted to make sure that we were trained properly. So if we ever ended up on a ship or a plane going somewhere, that we knew what to do. And so here I was on the USS Carl Vinson, heading out to sea. Now, what we did was we headed out to Korea, the Korean Peninsula. Everybody else was going to Kuwait, outlining areas for the invasion of Iraq. We were sent to the Korean Peninsula to basically ensure North Korea didn't take advantage of the situation that was going on in Iraq at the time with the invasion. So when we were on a ship, we were stopping at port. I mean, I can't complain. I mean, I wanted to see the world. My recruiter promised I'd be able to see the world, and I was seeing the world. Korea a couple times. Guam. I spent like 2 weeks in Guam, which was great. Perth, Australia. Singapore, Hong Kong, Hawaii. My first time to Hawaii. It was amazing. So in 9 months at sea, I saw more of the world than most people will see in a lifetime. I loved it. But there's a lot of time while you're at sea, there's only so much you can do. I mean, yeah, you're working, but, you know, at a certain point, I had a pretty good non-commissioned officer. Yeah. So there was a lot of downtime. I mean, we're talking like, 15 hours of downtime when you're not at your post. So, hit the gym when you can. You're waiting in line for chow. Or you read. I was always a pretty prolific reader. And that's where I found Brian Blessed. He's a actor, very famous Shakespearean actor, played in Henry V. I think he played in Flash as well. And he attempted Everest 3 times, and he wrote a book about it. And I started reading about that. Then I found John Krakauer's book, Into Thin Air, about the 96 tragedy on Everest. And I found myself more and more interested in Everest. Like, why do these people spend all this money and all this time to go to a place where they may die and they may not even make it? And it's like, maybe it's just bored rich people. But the more I start reading about it, the books, Mallory and Irving, Edmund Hillary, and Tenzing Norgay, and I was like, wow, these guys are pretty incredible. And then in 2005 to the end of 2006, I found myself in Iwakuni, Japan. I was stationed in Japan for nearly 2 years. Loved it. Got to see again more of the world. I got to see Thailand. I spent 6 weeks in the Northern Territory in Australia. Korea again for a few weeks. But living in Japan, experiencing Japan, going up to Tokyo, the Roppongi. For those who know, you know. Going to Kyoto, Osaka. It was amazing. And then I actually spent 2 months at Sergeant's course in Okinawa. And so when I got back from Japan, there was a series that had just been starting to play on the Discovery Channel about Everest, Beyond the Limit. And I was like, I'm going to check it out, because I remember reading the books, when I was on deployment on the ship, and just getting back from Japan and going through my first divorce. And I was like, well, let's check it out. And I loved it. I fell in love with it. I kept that series was played on repeat. I even still to this day, I'll still watch it at least once a week. And actually, when I went to Everest, and we'll talk about this in future videos, I got to meet Purba Tashi. A really quick meeting, but we've stayed in touch. Purba, namaste. I love you, brother. He's given some great stories, which I'll share in future videos. And I just kept that interest throughout my time in the Marine Corps about going to Everest. Now, as we progress in these videos, I did end up making a trip to Kilimanjaro in Africa. But before, and we'll save that for another video, but going back to my time in Japan, that actually opened me up for my first experience going onto a mountain, which was Mount Fuji. Watashi wa noborimashita? Watashi wa noborimashita Fuji-san. So I climbed to the top of Mount Fuji. Noborimashita Fuji-san. I made it to the top of Mount Fuji. And I still got my walking stick. I'll have to show it in a future video. And they burn like little symbols along the way to show that you made it at certain stations. But it was foggy. It was cloudy. It was rainy. I mean, there were some people who took their kids up on Mount Fuji. And they were crying. I felt bad for them. There were some adults who were crying. Now, there was a group of us. It's called an MWR trip. An MWR is Morale, Welfare, Recreation. And so it was me, 2 Marines, one friend of mine, Dennis Deppen, love you, and Tagel, if you ever see this, love you, brother. But Dennis Deppen, we're still friends 20 years later. Love him. You're the man. And so we're 3 Marines, the rest are sailors, some airmen, and civilians. And so we stay at this one little hut before we get to the summit. And most people are like, fuck this. And they're going to head down. They're going to stay, they're going to sleep. It's warm, it's comfortable. There's like that communal type blanket where everybody has like these little slots. And they're not getting out. But like, no, hey, I came here to fucking summit Mount Fuji. God damn it, I'm gonna fucking summit Mount Fuji. And I did. I did it. I got to the top of Mount Fuji. And then that really opened me up when I got back and started watching this series, Beyond the Limit, Everest Beyond the Limit. I was like, man, that started opening up in my own mind. Could I get to Everest one day? Well, I did. More to that in future videos. Have that resolute climb. Let's stack those wins to be the best you can be.